When a woman stops reaching, stops chasing, stops explaining, something ancient stirs in the male psyche. This is not a manipulation. It is a magnetic return to balance. The feminine energy, in its raw form, does not pursue. It beckons, it breathes, it receives. Carl Jung once wrote, in a barely circulated letter, that the male unconscious is terrified of the void, and paradoxically, magnetized by it. What is the void, if not the sacred silence of the woman who no longer seeks validation? The woman who withdraws her light, not out of bitterness, but out of remembrance? You see, most women have been conditioned to believe that silence equals rejection. But in sacred feminine terms, silence is clarity. Silence is where your intuition speaks. It is the temple in which your soul stretches its limbs and whispers, "Let him come to you." Not because you're better, but because the moment you stop running toward him, his deeper animal awakens. There is a primal part of man, buried beneath performance, ego, and logic. A part older than civilization. And this part doesn't respond to pretty words or clever strategies. It responds to energy, to mystery, to absence. It is this paradox that modern women have forgotten. That absence is not emptiness. It is presence turned inward, a return to the womb space of your own power. When you stop initiating, not from anger, but from truth, he senses it before you even speak. He feels the quiet rupture in the psychic thread that once tethered him to your seeking. And it's this fracture, invisible but felt, that awakens something ancient inside him. The chase, but not the chase for conquest. No, the chase for connection. The chase for the feminine that no longer gives herself away. The chase for what his unconscious knows is rare. A woman who has remembered that her silence is sacred. In tantric initiations, the woman begins by withdrawing her energy into the base of her spine. She closes her eyes. She sinks. And the man, if he is attuned, must follow her into the cave. Not with words, with presence, with hunger, with longing. This is not gender performance. This is energetic truth. Your silence, when rooted in dignity and inner knowing, becomes the initiation he did not know he needed. He may not consciously understand what's happening. He may even resist, panic, lash out, distract himself with other women or hollow victories. But his soul recognizes the shift. His anima, the inner feminine, feels the vacuum. And because nature abhors a vacuum, he begins to move toward you. But it only works when your silence is clean. Not passive aggression, not punishment, not withholding to control. Clean silence, rooted in self-respect, anchored in soul. The kind of silence that women have held for centuries when the men went off to war, to hunt, to lose themselves, trusting that their presence would be missed, not because they demanded it, but because they were irreplaceable. You are taught to speak louder when he pulls away, to explain yourself, to fix what isn't yours to fix. But what if I told you? Your power begins the moment you stop trying to prove it. There's a subtle but seismic shift in energy when a woman returns to herself. She no longer dances for attention. She becomes the music. Men feel this in their bones. It scrapes against something wordless inside them. The silence of a woman in her knowing disrupts the patterns of every man who has been fed on artificial validation. And the ones with depth, the ones who are ready, will come. Not because you demanded, but because your silence reminded them of a truth they forgot. That the feminine is not a performance, but a presence. There is a passage in an old tantric text, translated only once and kept from mainstream publication, that says, "She who closes her gaze and turns her light inward becomes a mirror to his buried fire." Your withdrawal, when done with reverence, does not push him away. It reveals him to himself. And this is terrifying, because most men are not used to being revealed. They are used to being entertained, admired, seduced, not seen. But the silence of a woman who sees beyond the mask and refuses to chase the mask, that silence becomes unbearable. He must move, or he must fall. Some women mistake this for power games. But it is not a game when it is real. It is not manipulation when it is your truth. Your silence in this light is a sacred offering, an invitation to rise, an echo of what his soul has always wanted but didn't know how to request. Because deep inside every man is the child who was praised only when he performed. And deeper still is the animal who once hunted for the gaze of a goddess hidden in the forest. And even deeper is the king, waiting to be called forth not with applause, but with absence. Your absence, your non-neediness, your refusal to offer what has not been earned in reverence. This is not about making him chase to feed your ego. This is about resetting the sacred polarity between masculine pursuit and feminine rootedness. Because when a woman stands still, not frozen, but full, the world shifts around her. Men shift around her. He will try to decode the silence. He will replay your last words. He will wonder why the energetic thread feels severed and not understand that it was never severed. It was retracted, returned to the source, to you. And if he has any access to his own instinct, to his own forgotten fire, he will feel the call. Not the call of a text message or a seductive glance, but the call of his blood. And it is only from this place, this instinctual ancient place, that the masculine awakens. He must move toward what feels untouchable, not because it is arrogant, but because it is divine. You are not a reward. You are a remembrance. And the silence that opens his instinct is not cold. It is the most sacred warmth he has ever missed without knowing why. If you're ready, we'll now step deeper into the art of energetic reversal and why retreating doesn't mean giving up, but invoking his hunger from a place that bypasses logic entirely. He has been trained to expect a pattern. You reach, he responds. You explain, he listens or pretends to. You offer softness, he grows comfortable. You begin to orbit his gravity instead of anchoring in your own. And so, slowly, invisibly, the primal energy reverses. He forgets the hunt. He forgets the ache. And what is a man without ache? A man who no longer remembers the call of the wild feminine. This is not your fault. It is the design of modern culture, where women are taught to perform intimacy instead of embody it, to earn affection instead of radiate sovereignty, where even desire becomes strategy, and the art of surrender is replaced with anxious devotion. But beneath this scripted chaos lies a forgotten principle, buried in the roots of tantric scripture and whispered in the halls of ancient mystery schools. Masculine desire only ignites when it is confronted with sacred resistance. Not resistance rooted in fear, not the brittle armor of trauma, but a soft, fierce reversal. The kind of energetic retreat that says, I do not need to come closer because I already belong to myself. Carl Jung described the anima, the inner feminine within every man, as elusive, poetic, emotionally unpredictable, and most importantly, inaccessible. She was not meant to be possessed, but to awaken his inner world through her presence and, just as powerfully, her absence. This is why ignoring him, when done with integrity, not resentment, is not cruelty. It is ceremony. It is a reversal of the modern wound, where women give too much and men feel too little. Reversal is not walking away in anger. It is walking back into yourself. You don't need to slam doors or send messages of finality. Reversal begins in the energy body. It's a frequency shift. The way you pull your aura inward. The way your spine realigns with something ancient and unyielding. The way your smile stops performing and becomes a riddle he no longer knows how to solve. And this mystery, begins to pull him toward you. Not the surface you, but the deep you. The one that's not waiting by the phone. The one that's not checking stories, decoding messages, or rehearsing responses. The one who has remembered her worth is not proven through proximity. This reversal confuses the masculine mind because it breaks the unconscious contract. You give, I decide. Instead, the message becomes, you decide. But I am no longer giving, and that shift, that single energetic rupture, sends shockwaves through his inner architecture. He may not name it, but he feels it, like walking into a room where the scent of a candle still lingers long after the flame is gone. He begins to wonder, why did the pattern change? What did I lose that I never appreciated? Where did her light go? You see, in every man's unconscious, there is a symbolic threshold, a place where he must choose, remain asleep in the comfort of her availability, or awaken through the ache of her absence. This is the forgotten art of reversal. It is the moment you become the mirror, not the offering. He begins to see himself in your silence, your stillness, your refusal to fill the space he once left empty. This is how the feminine becomes a guide, not by leading, but by removing the scaffolding. There is an ancient Sufi teaching that says, the beloved turns her face away, and the lover falls deeper in. Men need this space, the ache of it, the not knowing, the vacuum, because the masculine only grows when it must reach beyond what is easy. If everything is already offered, he has nothing to earn, and a man who earns nothing becomes hollow in his desire. Do you see? Your reversal is not rejection, it is resurrection. It asks, are you willing to remember what it means to chase something real? And what is real to the masculine psyche? Not perfection, not beauty, not constant access. What is real is challenge, mystery, pullback, presence. Every sacred myth has this built in. The goddess disappears into the forest, into the underworld, into the silence, and the hero must journey. He must leave the familiar, face his shadow, pass through trials, and earn the next glimpse of her radiance. This isn't cruelty, it's alchemy. Reversal is your invitation for him to choose transformation, not comfort. But here's the most sacred secret. You do not reverse to provoke him. You reverse to find yourself again. Because if you're honest, the more you reach, the more you forget your center. You become a satellite spinning around a dying star. You feel depleted, confused, hungry. And this hunger is not for him, it's for your own life force. So when you withdraw, energetically, emotionally, even sexually, you are not depriving him. You are feeding yourself. You are remembering your body, your breath, your soul's rhythm. This energy shift creates a field around you, a vibration he can feel from across the room, across the screen, across time. It tells him something has changed. Something vital has returned to the woman he thought he understood. And he will respond in one of two ways. The first, collapse. He may punish you, guilt you, claim you're cold or playing games. This is his wounded boy speaking, the one who only knows love as transaction. Let him cry. Let him protest. You are not here to soothe the masculine ego that fears loss more than it seeks depth. The second, rise. He may become curious. He may soften. He may step toward you, not out of entitlement, but humility. This is the man who remembers, the one who once chased stars in his dreams and wakes now to feel your silence like fire on his skin. You are not here to train him. You are here to remember yourself. And in remembering, you offer a choice, not through words, through energy, through the sacred reversal. He begins to lean forward, not because you asked him to, but because your retreat reminded him of the very ache that makes him human, the ache to earn what cannot be owned. This is the essence of sacred feminine reversal. You become the terrain he must explore, the dream he cannot download, the warmth he can no longer take for granted. And as he reaches, not with hands but with presence, the polarity returns, the current shifts, the hunt begins anew. But this time, he's not hunting your attention. He's hunting his own awakening. He's hunting the man he could become if he were to stand in the fire of your stillness and not look away. And you're no longer trying to be chosen. You have become the choice. Now we go deeper, into the place where his unconscious shadow begins to feel your absence, not just as longing, but as initiation. It doesn't happen on the surface. In fact, on the outside, he may look unaffected, going about his day, answering messages, laughing in rooms that no longer feel yours. He may even seem lighter, freer. as though your absence confirmed something he needed to believe, that he doesn't need you, that he can forget. But this is only what the eyes can see. Beneath that facade, in a place deeper than his awareness, something begins to stir. It's not in his logic, not where he keeps his justifications or the stories he tells himself. No, the first place your withdrawal touches is his shadow, the part of him he doesn't want you to see. Carl Jung called the shadow the unlived life, the buried emotions, denied desires, forgotten wounds, the parts of a man that remain untouched by light because he has never been forced to face them. And nothing shines light into that darkness quite like the absence of the feminine gaze. You were his mirror, not the kind that flatters, the kind that reveals. When your energy pulled away, so did the reflection that kept him anchored in his illusion. Suddenly, he's alone with himself, no longer propped up by your softness, no longer comforted by your constant presence. And into that silence, his shadow rises, not in words, in sensation, a heaviness in his chest he can't explain, a dream he can't quite remember but wakes up sweating from, a flicker of a memory, a scent, a sound, something primal, something that reminds him of what he lost, not just in you, but in himself. Because what most women never realize is this: when you withdraw, you don't just remove affection, you remove a portal, a sacred, living gateway through which he accessed parts of his soul he didn't know existed. And now that gateway has closed, not locked, but closed. And the shadow hates a closed door, because the masculine shadow, left unchecked, feeds on entitlement. It tells him she should still be there. And yet, when you are no longer there, his psyche fractures. His old self begins to collapse, and he stands, not in grief, but in confrontation. Not with you, but with the version of himself that cannot control you anymore. He may call it confusion. He may call it anger. He may numb it with sex, alcohol, noise. But the truth is simpler. The shadow feels naked. It feels exposed by your absence, because while you were giving, even when he dismissed it, he could ignore the parts of himself that were still hungry, immature, afraid. But now, he must feel them. Your silence becomes a container in which his shadow has nowhere to run. And here is where the masculine either fragments or awakens. This is not your responsibility, but it is your power. To recognize that your withdrawal is not an ending, it is a mirror. Not because you intend to hurt him, but because your energy once covered the wound. And now that it's gone, the wound bleeds openly. Some men will avoid this reckoning at all costs. They will blame you, call you heartless, say you changed. They will seek women who mirror their ego instead of their shadow. And in doing so, they will remain small. But others, the few, will feel something holy. Not immediately. It may take weeks, months, even years. But there will come a night when he can no longer outrun the echo of you. Not the you who begged, the you who left. The you who didn't slam the door, but became the door, and then closed it. In myth, the shadow always appears at the threshold. It is the final guardian before transformation. You cannot become who you're meant to be without facing it. And when your absence confronts a man with his, he either chooses depth or distraction. But here's the paradox. Your silence is not only medicine for him, it is medicine for you. Because the shadow doesn't only live in him, it lives in you too. In the part of you that feared losing love if you stopped giving. In the part of you that believed silence meant abandonment. In the girl who learned that presence must be earned. And now you are no longer a girl. You are a woman in her fullness. You are a woman who has learned to sit with her own longing instead of filling it with his crumbs. You are a woman who knows that her withdrawal is not punishment. It is prophecy. And in this prophecy, he sees a future he never imagined. A future where love cannot be taken, only received. A future where the feminine does not beg, she beckons. She blesses. She reveals. He may come back, but not as he was. He may knock quietly, test the threshold, speak in new tones. And if he does, it won't be because he missed your body. It will be because he missed the mirror, the one that dared to leave, the one that reflected his shadow not to shame him, but to awaken him. There is a secret ritual in tantric practice where the man sits blindfolded before the woman, and she does not touch him. She sits in silence, breathes, withdraws her energy from every center except her womb, and the man, unable to see, unable to reach, must feel, must sit in the discomfort of not being the one in control. This is your silence. This is your sacred reversal. You are not cold, you are ceremonial. You are not abandoning, you are invoking. Because when a man's shadow sees itself, it has only two options: suppression or surrender. And the ones who surrender, they don't return as boys. They return as men. Men who no longer fear your silence, men who worship it. Because they have walked through the absence and come out seeing. They have touched the part of themselves that only your withdrawal could reveal. And they will never forget the woman who dared to disappear, not as a weapon, but as a priestess. Not to destroy them, but to invite them deeper. Now we move into the mystery of what happens when your detachment becomes erotic, not in form, but in energy. There is something deeply unsettling, and yet irresistibly magnetic, about a woman who no longer needs to be touched to be felt. Her presence lingers not in the room, but in the nervous system. She doesn't flirt. She doesn't perform. She simply exists, and that existence becomes unbearable for the man who once had access to her, but now only remembers the heat she left behind. This is erotic detachment, not absence, not neglect, but the choice to remain sovereign while radiating desire so pure, so ungraspable, that the masculine cannot help but reach toward it again and again, without ever fully capturing it. Erotic detachment is what most women were never taught, because it requires you to source your aliveness from within, not from how he reacts. It is not coldness. In fact, it is warmth so self-contained, so unbothered by outcome, that it becomes unbearable for those who crave control. The moment you detach, not from love, but from approval, something ancient begins to move in him. It is not logical. It is cellular. Carl Jung hinted at this when he wrote of the anima as the inner siren, the unseen woman who both terrifies and compels a man to leave the safety of his ego. She does not speak in sentences. She moves through dreams, through scent, through a silence that hums with memory. And when you become that, the embodied anima, he begins to feel you in the places where words have no power. There is a false idea that eroticism must be visible. But the deepest erotic current lives in the unseen, in the space between your breath and his perception. In the moment he senses you've pulled your energy inward and realizes he no longer owns your fire. This realization breaks something open, because until now, he mistook your availability for love. He mistook your initiation for devotion. He thought your gaze was his, that your warmth would always be there to soothe his chaos. But now that warmth is gone, and not out of punishment, but reverence. You retracted it like a high priestess drawing the veil. And now, your detachment becomes a myth in his memory. He begins to ache, not for your body, but for the way your presence once made him feel alive, the way your laughter cracked open something innocent in him, the way your silence now fills the room louder than your voice ever could. This is the eroticism of restraint, not suppression, but sacred conservation. When a woman no longer gives from depletion, but from overflow, she becomes untouchable. And the man who once grazed her skin without gratitude now trembles at the thought of being let back into her field. He feels it in his bones, the shift. You are no longer circling around him. You are no longer asking, no longer reaching. You are simply being, and in this being, you have become his initiation. He may try to recreate you, seek your flavor in others, replicate your cadence in conversations that feel like echoes. But it won't work, because erotic detachment imprints. Once a man has tasted the frequency of a woman who owns herself, no imitation will satisfy. He may not understand this. He may call it madness. He may even reject it altogether. But his soul will remember, because deep masculine arousal is not just about flesh, it is about contrast. And when your detachment becomes more magnetic than your devotion once was, he begins to crave what he cannot name. He begins to crave the woman who no longer asks to be chosen. He begins to crave the tension, that exquisite ache between what he once had and what he cannot possess again without surrender. This is sacred feminine power. Not the loud kind, not the kind that fights for space or demands recognition. The quiet, haunting power that lives in the woman who has walked through longing and come out glowing. You don't need to prove anything. Your detachment does the talking. It moves through his psyche like smoke, a scent he can't forget, a presence that remains even when your body is far away, a hum in the background of his days, and the center of his sleepless nights. This is not a strategy, it's a vibration. It cannot be faked, because it doesn't come from anger, it comes from truth. You have detached not because you stopped caring, but because you started remembering. You remembered the weight of your energy. You remembered how easily you gave before he earned it. You remembered that your longing is sacred, and not everyone is initiated enough to receive it. And in this remembering, you became erotic, not through availability, but through mystery. There is an ancient practice in which the priestess would stand at the threshold of the temple, veiled, radiant, unreachable, not to tease, but to test, not to withhold, but to activate. The man who dared to step forward had to do so with reverence, with offerings, with silence, with humility. You are that threshold now, not because you want to be worshipped, but because you have remembered that your soul's heat was never meant to be begged for. He will feel it in the way you look at him or don't, in the way you answer or let the moment pass, in the way you move, not away from him, but deeper into yourself. And this is what awakens his deepest longing. A woman who is no longer seducing, a woman who has become the seduction, not through lips or curves, but through frequency, through detachment, through the erotic mystery of being full and still walking away. Let him tremble, let him wonder, let him ache not for what he lost, but for who he must become to be let in again. And if he is worthy, if he is ready, he will meet you not in fantasy, but in fire, because your detachment was never about punishment. It was the sacred flame that burned away illusion. And now only the truth remains. Soon we enter the final veil, the place where the chase is no longer about you, and yet you become its center. He was never really chasing you. Not your name, not your face, not your laugh, nor your scent, nor the way you lit up a room. He was chasing the reflection of himself he saw when you stepped away, when your eyes turned to the horizon instead of to him, when your voice stopped explaining, when your body stopped reaching, when your spirit folded back into itself like a silk veil, sacred, withdrawn, sovereign. What he chased was not the woman in the mirror, but the void you left in his world, that unbearable mirror of his own unworthiness. Because when a woman pulls away, a man confronts the haunting silence he has spent a lifetime avoiding. It is in that silence that his illusions crack. He sees the truth, that all his seeking, all his bravado, all his hunting, it was never truly about winning her. It was about finding himself worthy of being chosen by something he cannot control. You, the embodied storm he cannot contain. You, the untamed ocean that slips through his fingers when he tries to own it. You, the ancient oracle who knows the game and yet refuses to play it. The moment you stopped feeding his ego, he had to face his own hunger. The moment you stopped answering, he had to learn how to listen. The moment you stopped needing him, he had to feel his own emptiness. And that emptiness, that's what stings. That's what drives the chase. Because he was never after your presence. He was after the return of his own masculine power, which your absence unearthed. In a world that taught him to conquer women like trophies, your distance became the only thing he couldn't possess. You became the unsolvable riddle, the sacred flame that would not burn for him just because he wanted it. That's when he started to burn. But here's what most women never realize. The moment you make the chase about you, you lose. Because it never was. The chase is about him. His reflection, his fears, his unmet longing, his forgotten worth, his broken connection to the feminine divine, which only you can mirror but never give. You are not the prize. You are the initiation. You are the mirror that reveals whether he is truly ready to meet the sacred, or whether he will collapse back into the boy who only wants the thrill of the hunt. The men who only want the thrill will run faster when you run. The men who are awakening will stop. They will feel. They will choose silence over games. They will rise, not to win you, but to stand beside you. They will come not to chase, but to claim themselves. And that is where the real man is born. So you see, the chase was never about your body. It was never about your charm. It was never about your softness, your mystery, your surrender. It was never even about your rejection. It was about the echo of your soul. The echo that reminded him of a place he lost within himself. A place where men bow, not to women, but to truth, to love, to the feminine that does not bend to ego, but awakens spirit. You are not the story he tells his friends. You are the myth his soul came to remember. So if he's chasing you now, ask yourself, what part of him is really running? And what part of you is still trying to be caught? Because the wild feminine does not run. She does not wait. She does not hope to be seen. She walks, slowly, barefoot, back to her own fire. And the ones who are meant to walk beside her will no longer chase. They will follow the flame until they are ready to become it. Thank you for walking this path with me tonight, for listening beyond the surface and feeling through the silence. This was not just a story. It was an awakening. One that begins not in the man's eyes, but in your remembering. Your body knows the truth, and your soul has always been the flame. If you're ready to walk this path with me, stay, because what you're about to discover will change the way you see yourself.